let's talk first about the big, huge elephant in the room, always Donald Trump. He still continues to say that the election was stolen, even repeating that lie this weekend in Iowa. Take a very quick listen to this exchange with NBC News correspondent Vaughn Hilliard.
President Trump, did you intend to overturn the 2020 election?
You know the answer.
I mean, Aaron, he's been indicted now. He's been indicted by the federal government for his role in 2020 election interference. Are we going to have to wait until the debate stage to see somebody confront Trump directly? I mean, any of his opponents versus these milquetoast swipes that we're seeing during some media interviews?
Well, I mean, look, Katie, first of all, let's try to manage expectations here. There are still 449 days until the 2024 election. So let's just remind folks that there's still a lot of time left. But look, you're right. This election is not going to be like any other election that we've seen as Donald Trump takes us into the latest chapter of our unprecedented politics, right? We do have a presidential candidate who is a defendant in multiple criminal trials. He's going to be bouncing from the campaign trail to the courtroom. We don't know if he's going to take the debate stage. He sees this as kind of an interview scenario for his potential vice presidential picks. And his base for now still very much seems to be with him, particularly because of his legal challenges.
Lucy, you've dealt with presidential campaigns before. The first GOP debate's just around the corner. If Trump agrees to participate, and we know that's a big if, defendant Trump could face off on stage against his former vice president, Mike Pence, who is a witness in the January 6th case against him. What would you actually advise, I'll make him your client at the time, Mike Pence, in this unprecedented scenario?
Well, if Mike Pence were my client, I would have been fired as his consultant a long time ago because we agree on nothing about Mike Pence's strategy. On January 7th, 2021, Mike Pence had a couple of options. One was to recede from the public view. Another was to double down on being serious and asking people to take seriously what had just transpired. And instead of doing that, he kind of waffled. And now he's sort of anti-Trump, kind of not, but, you know, Joe Biden bad. So don't expect Mike Pence to find new courage. The problem on the debate stage, there are a few problems. One of them is that it's going to be moderated by Fox anchors. So I don't think that the kind of questions that we would want to see happen or the kind of come to Jesus moments we'd like to see happen between those candidates is going to happen on that stage. The other problem is none of these candidates, with the exception of Chris Christie, is running against Trump. They're all running against each other. So they're actually mostly spending their time trying to show that they're more loyal than the other to Trump and pandering to him. So it will be a more interesting debate if he's on in some ways, but in other ways, if he's on, it's just going to be a kind of odd spectacle of people running for second place.
I don't think they'd take me up on the offer, but I'd be happy to moderate that GOP debate if, you know, they would take me. Aaron, you got the chance to sit down with Education Secretary Miguel Cardona last week. The Biden administration's been very vocal in confronting the GOP for its war on woke, including Ron DeSantis, who is way far back in second place and polling right now, and the war on woke's detrimental impacts on education, specifically in states like mine, Florida. How critical, Aaron, is education going to be for the 2024 election on both sides of the aisle?
Yeah, well, Katie, thanks for mentioning that interview. You can read about my full conversation with Secretary Cardona in my new newsletter, The Amendment, and on the 19th website. But yeah, we had a robust conversation, and Secretary Cardona is a cabinet member that we haven't necessarily seen a ton of in the last 3 years. But I think increasingly, as the GOP has continued to try to, you know, erase history, ban books, and as we see, you know, the Supreme Court's decisions on affirmative action on student loan debt, he has really gone increasingly on offense with voters who are going to be impacted by these decisions and by this rhetoric, by this policy. I think that is something that we're going to see even more as we head into 2024, because education is on the ballot for voters of both parties. It just depends on what that means and who you ask, which voters, right, which parents, which rights we are talking about feeling threatened. And that is going to make, I think, a huge difference headed into November. Teachers are among the largest voting bloc in the country, and educators are feeling under attack in this moment. And so really hearing from the highest profile, leader on education in this country in this moment is something that certainly a lot of the, progressive groups on education have said that they are wanting to see. And that is something, at least that it seems like Cardona is willing to do more and more as these attacks continue.
Lucy, approximately 75%, it's a very big number, of the individuals who previously contributed $50,000 or more to Trump super PACs haven't donated so far to super PACs supporting any individual GOP candidate. In fact, one prior Trump super PAC donor has instead given $1 million plus to 4 of Trump's rivals. We all know money makes the world go round. What does this say about Trump's true viability here?
I don't think it says anything about his viability. For one thing, wait until Trump is the nominee. You're going to see all of those Republican mega donors who wish for someone other than Trump. They're all going to come home to Trump once he's the nominee. It's a phenomenon that we see every cycle. It's a phenomenon that we see with big players in the Republican space, folks like the Koch network, others. They may prefer someone else to get through the primary. Maybe they'd like to get away from Trump. They'd like to see Tim Scott. But when Trump is the nominee, they will back him, perhaps with their nose plugged. Trump is going gangbusters with small dollar donors, and sometimes that gets a questionable reputation about what the impact of small dollar donations is. I know everyone thinks it's wonderful. In Trump's case, it's not so wonderful. It is a cult activation machine. So after each indictment, he has continued to raise tons of money. He will continue to. So I don't think it says much about his viability at all. Remember also, the Republican primary, that reflects a very, very small number of voters. Not only do very few Americans even participate in presidential primaries, you would be lucky to tap out at like 10% of voters, of Americans in a presidential primary. So he is working right now to curry favor with people like Republican primary voters in Iowa who will go to the polls by showing up on a cold winter night in Iowa to caucus night in some middle school gym where you sit for hours listening to rabid campaign staff talk about why you should support their candidate. We are not currying favor with your average American right now. So I think he's very viable, and that's because he's viable in these dynamics.
Well, then maybe he needs to bust out the Vivek Ramaswamy karaoke that we saw doing. I ran out of time, ladies. I wanted to do the Vivek Ramaswamy stuff, but I couldn't. But I'll have you guys back so I can have you guys break that down and maybe give him not the golden buzzer. Lucy Caldwell, Aaron Haynes, thanks for joining me today.